So we've all read this book, Robert Webb's Come Again, and Robert Webb, as you probably know, is still a comedian, and he's best known for his role in Peep Show with David Mitchell. And the other year he wrote a memoir called How Not to Be a Boy, which became a bestseller. And off the back of that, his publishers asked him to write a novel, which was this, which is an idea he'd said he had batting around in his head since the Peep Show series, actually. So it was an idea that he'd been brewing, but this is actually his debut novel. And he describes it, I read some reviews and some things about it, and he describes it as a romp. So I just wondered for you two whether you thought it was an easy and enjoyable read in the way he hoped it would be.
Shall I go first then?
Yeah, I can go first.
I thought it was light and it was easy to read, but I felt it was too flippant and too much a comedian having a take on literature, which I thought was a bit disingenuous. So I didn't really enjoy it. I'm sorry.
Don't have to apologise to me. So you thought that the comedic elements didn't really, that there was a mismatch between the style?
Yes. Yeah, I haven't read any reviews deliberately because I didn't want to kind of bring in other people's ideas, but my response was that it was trying too hard to be funny, and for me that spoilt any sort of character development, and the actual plot was so contrived, perhaps deliberately, that it was laughable. So, you know, it didn't work for me.
Yeah. What about you, Terri? Do you agree, or did you enjoy it?
No, not at all, I'm afraid. And I concur totally with what Ian has just said. And, you know, there were parts of it that reminded me of the Laurel and Hardy era. And, you know, schoolboy humour, it was very immature and puerile. And for me, it just didn't work. I felt that the opening chapter looked quite promising in that he was dealing with Kate's potential suicide. And, you know, so the first few pages were quite credible and authentic. And then later on, he seemed to almost belittle mental health issues. And I feel that he did the same with Charles when we go back to the 1990s and his bullying. So at one point, I'm feeling quite empathic towards Charles. And then later on, you know, this is a wonderful aspect that Webb could have developed. But again, he ridicules it. And the whole thing for me was an absolute farce. The positive thing that I have to say is the way that Kate was ready to expose the Russian playboy and the nepotism and so on and so forth. So that was the only bit that, you know, I actually felt was credible and authentic.
But you did finish it then? Did you both finish it?
I finished it,
yeah.
But I would not have finished it unless it had been the book of the month.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I mean, I finished it, and I think I have similar opinions to you, but I just wondered what you thought of Kate. Ian, what do you think of the main character? Do you think Kate was well drawn, sympathetically drawn? Or?
It's an interesting point because a male author with a female protagonist is potentially tricky, and I felt he got it completely wrong because he sort of drew this character who was feisty, highly intelligent, very together really, who for some reason has spent 25 years working for somebody she has no respect for, doing a job which is, to say the least, questionable, and has been married to this person, still keeping her own name, which I thought was quite interesting, who is complete waste of space, obviously has no consideration for her and her own life, is just completely immersed in this useless novel. It just doesn't add up. She wouldn't have done either of those things. She'd have been out, if she's the person, this karate silver medalist who's, you know, really strong personality, has sort of stuck with 25 years of work and home life, no mention of children or anything, although ironically this mysterious other version of Luke living in America has got 3 kids, which I thought was quite interesting. All these things she's put up with, and then when he dies, she's going to top herself. I don't know why, you know, that it's just the motivation's all wrong. And that the whole, I thought it was quite, the way he'd written her in this novel was actually quite insulting from a feminist perspective. And I'd be interested to see what your 2 takes on that was.
What did you think, Terri, sorry.
That's okay. She just didn't come across as an authentic character for me at all. And again, I concur with what you're saying, Ian. And she was just so wishy-washy. And, you know, I can understand that following the loss of her husband, that then, you know, grief can be quite complex and make us do all manner of wild things. But I suppose, thinking about it now, the death of her husband actually prompted her to do something about Charles and his corrupt business, didn't it? So, in a sense, it's quite ironic that she's contemplating suicide, and yet this is the point where she actually comes alive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe the point was that she had nothing to lose, so that was why she. I don't know. For me, she didn't feel terribly real. She felt more like a plot device than a person, because there were all kinds of aspects of her character that then were used later on to aid the plot at the end. Did you feel that as well, Ian?
I felt the end was just so awful, because it was such a ridiculous spoof of a thriller. And fair enough, if he wants to sort of pastiche literary genres, that's fine. But I mean, the whole way that ridiculous taxi car chase thing was written, and then the farcical sort of fight scene in the theatre, was
which
just
ripped off from Moulin Rouge. I thought the fight scene in the theatre was just ripped off from the final scenes of Moulin Rouge.
Right. Well, it was clearly satire, I suppose, of the thriller genre, but I didn't really feel the need for that to be satirized. It's again, it's the whole sort of comedian writing a novel and using it as a form of satire. I didn't particularly want to read that, really. I didn't find it exciting because it was so absurd.
And did any of the characters feel particularly real to you? I'll go back to Terri now. I mean, nobody seemed to like how well Kate was drawn, but what about any of the others? Did any of the other characters work, or their relationships?
I suppose now that you asked that question, maybe Toby.
Yeah.
But then I only really got a hold of him towards the end. He seemed to be, you know, adding some kind of normality to the situation. If we extract him from the ridiculous and amateurish, you know, chasing in the taxis and so on and so forth. But no one else at all. You know, they were all just so weak, and as I said,
two-dimensional, I think you described them as, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it hard to, with the parents, there was this sort of salt of the earth, left-leaning cab driver and this snobby mother. And I thought, how did that couple ever get together? I couldn't see.
Yeah.
It, like you say, it was almost like it was entirely done for comedy value.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, and the sort of the characterization was sacrificed for the comedy. I felt a bit, which was a shame, really, because the comedy was quite funny in play. Did anybody find the comedy quite funny in places? If you took it apart, if you pulled it apart from the characterization and the plot and everything else, and just had these little comedy scenes, did you find any of them funny, or did you just find them puerile?
I just found them quite silly.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly, I didn't, you know, it isn't my kind of humour.
Yeah.
So didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah. How about you, Ian? Did you?
I thought one or two of the scenes in the sort of dream / reversion to the past, however you want to categorize it, there were one or two situations in there which were sort of quite well done. Some of his one-liners were quite good. One that sticks in my mind is that her anger had already reached cruising level. I thought that was quite neat. I don't know whether it is his original idea, but some of the one-liners were quite good, but nothing sustained, really.
Yeah. I'd agree with you about like the 1990s sections, that I found some of that quite funny, but then I was looking, he's sort of, you know, he's a little bit younger than me, but not much. And I kind of felt like it was like a Generation X novel. And I wondered if you only got that if you were of that age. If you were born between 1970 and 1980, you might think, that's what it was like being a student in the 90s, and get something from it in the way that other people from other generations. I mean, I don't know how old either of you are, but I don't know if any of you got that feeling as well, that it felt like it was a novel written by and for people in their late 40s and 50s.
Have you noticed Christine's joined us, by the way?
Is she here? Because I can't see her. Christine, where are you? I can't see you on my screen. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hi.
What did you think? Did you think this was like a Generation X type novel?
I was born in that period, and no, I hated it, to be honest. I just could not get into it. I tried, knowing that I needed to come to the book club. I tried again. I got to page 150.
You didn't. So you didn't even finish it.
I didn't even get to the taxi ride chase. No. Yeah, I did really try, and I really tried, because I knew that I was coming to this today, but I just didn't like his humour. I couldn't get into it. And
do you think it was a mismatch between the humour and because it's a novel about grief and loss at the start anyway, do you think there is just a mismatch there between this sort of superficial studenty humour and this awful big feelings that he's...
And I just maybe he's writing things that don't suit his background, maybe. So if you wanted to write a comedy book, then write that, rather than try and be this when you're not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you think he was trying to do too much, maybe, and he should have just stuck to the comedy? Maybe just rom-com.
If people that like his humour, they'll buy his books for that humour. I don't think it really works when he's trying to get into anything more serious, if that makes sense. So it's just, there's just, apparently I did look at some reviews, and the book he wrote before this apparently had good reviews. So, and
I think that's why he got asked, because he wrote that was a memoir, and then they asked him if he could write a novel,
Yeah.
So, and this is his debut novel, and you know, it's hard to write, you know, your first novel. Most people don't get their first novels published because the first one is never very good. So, you know, so it's a big thing getting your first novel out there. So, yeah, so it's quite, considering it's his first one, I suppose it's not too bad. But I read one review, like you, I read one review, and the reviewer said the novel feels like two books that have been awkwardly stitched together because there's this kind of mix of time traveling romance and spy thriller. Was that the sense that you got?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Jump in, I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the time traveling section was far too long. That didn't, I mean, it took up probably, I would say, getting on for half the novel, and there were, towards the end, I felt, you know, what is he going on about? Why is he even sort of telling us this stuff? And obviously you don't know for certain that it's a dream, and then he immediately reveals afterwards that it was a dream, and then at the end sort of throws a bit of doubt on that with this discovery of the novel by the namesake. Sorry, Christine, you won't have got that far.
No.
But at the end, she's doing some work in the bookshop, and this novel, there's a box of these novels by Luke Fairbright, who is like a parallel version of her dead husband, whose life she saved by apparently literally going back in time. And so there's this twist at the end, which is so sort of lumbering and heavy-handed. It's just like a final insult, really. And it's almost as though the editor has said, oh, you need a twist at the end. So he said, oh, I'll invent another Luke Fairbright then, which mysteriously is the one whose life Kate saved by going back in time. So there's a sort of massive contradiction at the end for this supposed twist, which is, so we're all supposed to say, oh, it wasn't really a dream then. Wow. And that was so clumsy. I can't really think of anything good to say about the whole book, I'm afraid.
So do you think it would have worked better if he had stuck to one genre? Do you think that's the problem, was that he was trying to do too much? He was trying to, oh, well, let's have a bit of a thriller, and it's a bit of a rom-com, and it's also sci-fi. What do you think, Terri? Do you think he was just painting with too many colours?
I think he was writing to order. Now I know that the publisher had asked him to write another book, but just listening to the comments, I'm reminded of drama lessons with year sixes, and you know, we may have been rehearsing for a play, but very often that they'd have a free choice, and I'll say, oh, okay, go ahead, just create something, and you know, ad lib as much as you want. And you know, some of these scenes, the chases and the scene on stage in the middle of the Tempest, how appalling is that? Just, you know, reminds me of 10 and 11-year-olds that, you know, that would make up puerile things like that.
Oh, poor, I'm glad he can't hear us. Poor Robert Webb.
Well, perhaps just by way of some redemption, I did hear him reading some of How Not to Be a Boy on Radio 4, and I found it incredibly moving. I was driving along in my car listening to it, and I actually had to pull over because I was so moved by it.
Really? Because I've not read it. So he can write.
Oh my God, yes, it was, well, I just found it quite, upsetting, really, because of what had happened to him, I
He had quite a difficult childhood, didn't his mother died when he was young? Was that
Do you
right?
know, I can't exactly remember now because it must be 2 years ago, but just the way he was reading it and what was happening to him, I was very sort of struck by. So I did come into this novel thinking this could be good, and so that kind of made it even worse because it was so bad.
Yeah. Oh, what a shame. I looked it up on the wiki page, and apparently it's already been optioned for a TV series. And
that might work. That could work.
This is the thing. I was going to ask you guys whether you thought it was more like a TV script that had been novelized rather than a novel that was then going to be turned into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If any of you felt that he wrote it with one eye on screen, as it were, rather than writing it as a novelist. What did you think, Christine? What did you think?
Oh, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it?
Did it feel like TV?
It didn't feel like he was writing it for the enjoyment of the book, if that's yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes they do write for screen, don't they, and hope that the book rights get taken on. But yeah, it probably would, would be better because it probably would, I don't know, make more sense in a silly way because people are used to his humour. But yeah, as to what he's thinking was, I don't know. But now you've spoken about his first book, I'd be interested to read that one. But yeah, to be honest, even if he made a TV series of that, I don't think I'd watch it. I really didn't like it.
How about you, Terri? Did you think he wrote it with one eye on the screen?
Well, I hadn't considered that, but now that you say it, he possibly did.
Because there's quite a lot of, he calls them visual flourishes, and when you think back over the book, there are quite a lot of sort of impactful scenes, like the car chase and the scene in the theatre, and these ones which could potentially translate well to the screen. And I wonder if that was at the back of his mind.
It may have been, and I watched about, well, no more than 10 minutes of one episode of the Peep Show.
Yeah.
And I just switched it off.
I quite like the Peep Show. His
humour is for a select audience.
Yeah.
But then that's the same for all novelists and TV writers, script writers, isn't it?
Yeah.
You either like it or you don't. So for me, this was, shall I call it, a Marmite book?
Yeah. It's just that we're all naysayers, really, aren't we? None of you really liked it. For myself, it was kind of meh. I thought it was an easy read. I read it quickly. I liked the 90s throwback bits because I was a student in the early 90s. So there was a bit of nostalgia there. And I did quite like used to like the Peep Show back in the day. So I quite liked his humour. But I feel as you did that the elements didn't work together. There was a mismatch between the comedy and the subject matter somehow, and it just didn't work overall. So I kind of agree with all of you. So I've been asked if we can finish off by you guys saying whether you'd recommend it to anyone else and what you'd give it out of 5. So let's start with you, Ian, because you're big on my screen. And what do you give it out of 5?
Well, I definitely wouldn't give it more than 2, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. Although I have to say, my partner read it because I was reading it, and she quite liked it. So she was. I was sort of, because I tend to be quite vocal when I'm reading a book, so I was sort of tutting away and saying, "Oh my God," while I was reading it, and so she said, "Oh, I'm going to read it," and she quite liked it. So,
what do you think she would have given it?
Me, she?
Yeah. Do you think she would have given it a higher score than you?
Yeah, 3 or a 4, I think. She's said, I don't know what you were moaning about. I thought it was fine.
Okay.
There you go.
It's a Marmite book. But what about you, Terri? What would you give it out of 5, and would you recommend it to anyone?
I don't know anyone that I would recommend it to. No, so that's a no in uppercase.
No.
And I cannot give it more than 1, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's fairly damning, and I guess that's probably a similar score from you, Christine, isn't it? What would
Yeah, that's it. Similar to Terri. Yeah, 1 if, and that's being generous.
Okay, well, I would give it. I don't know. I'm kind of with your partner, Ian. I didn't hate it. So I thought there were lots of flaws, but I read it quite quickly. So I give it a 3 actually, and I would recommend it to somebody who was, ill or recovering from something, so they didn't want to think too deeply about what they were reading. It's a bit of a fast food book, I would say. It's like, like the literary equivalent of eating a McDonald's. Just kind of, read it, and it doesn't make you think about anything, but it was okay.
But as Terri said, it does deal with some quite serious and profound topics.
Mm-hmm.
So there are elements to it which aren't lightweight, even though the overall tone of the book is frivolous. So it's not just a sort of light and frothy read, is it?
I suppose that's the thing, and I suppose that's, as you said at the beginning, Terri, it's that you kind of feel a bit let down by it, because at the start there's a bit of a promise that it might explore grief in a more meaningful way, but at the end it just becomes the romp that he describes it as, and that's not. So we almost feel deceived, I guess, by it. Is that what you thought as well, Christine? Is that why you gave up? Or did
I don't know. It reminded me, I don't know if you remember in the 80s, there was a comedy programme with Rick Mayall called The Young Ones.
Oh, yeah.
I could not get into that whatsoever. It was, yeah. This is the book equivalent of The Young Ones.
Yeah.
I just could not get into the humour. I just was not interested. It was all a bit weird. So I'd say if you come across a Young Ones fan, they might like this.
I used to like the Young Ones, so maybe that's why I'm a bit more sympathetic. I like Young Ones, I like Peep Show, so I didn't have a problem with the humour, but I just felt it was misapplied, maybe.
Yeah.
And the lazy stereotyping, we should mention that as well. The Russian Abramovich character and all the Russian heavies, it's just so lazy, and it's also a little bit kind of racist as well, really.
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you've got a point.
Other than that, it was great.
Yeah, poor Robert. Oh, girl. I think we've probably said, unless anyone's got anything else they want to say about it, it's pretty damning, isn't it? Has anybody got any more points they want to make?
I think if he had removed his mask of comedy, there is potential in parts of the plot. But and I have to ask myself, why is he hiding behind this mask of comedy?
Good point.
Was there comedy in the memoir, or was it just a straight memoir?
It was a straight memoir, and the bits I heard, and it was only 2 Radio 4 like 15-minute book of the week type broadcast, were straight and very honest, and as I say, very moving. Yeah.
So you have a point then, Terri. I wonder if he was told to be funny. I wonder if he was told, people know you for comedy, so you need to make it funny, or if it was a mask he was hiding behind.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point, actually. Yeah, he's a comedian after all. It's what people expect, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think it could make a TV show. I don't know if it would be feature length, but you could probably get an hour out of it.
Yeah.
As long as you could disrupt the entire London transport and road system for a day.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit mad at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I have to question the actual publisher. You know, did they want him to write it as a comedian to boost sales?
Yeah.
Because he's, you know, he's very well known for his sketches. So perhaps it was a, you know, a sales ploy as well. Or perhaps I'm being too cynical here.